Hello, this is What I've Been Thinking with Marcus Cage. I'm your host, Marcus Cage. And by now, you guys already know Bernie Sanders has dropped out of the race. I won't make this very long. I will just give my thoughts on it because I feel that it's important that I at least say something, especially since I do talk a lot about Bernie Sanders and I have been a avid supporter. Um, I think this is the wrong move, especially for the reasons that he cited. If he wanted to have more leverage, I don't see how you get more leverage getting out of the race this time, especially since Joe Biden is not given any leverage to your favor. Not even so much as cabinet picks or just anything. He's literally giving nothing uh, as far as on policy that he would take that's a Bernie policy. And the thing which I want to get across to a lot of those people uh, who feel Bernie supporters should just jump on the Biden bandwagon, you have to offer us something. We don't support Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders is giving us some little stipend on the side, or that we're personally related to Bernie, or that we gain something from this. We gain something from the policies which he's trying to push. These are the same policies which we are all trying to push. That is why we support Bernie Sanders. So if you want our support, you need to try to uh, at least come around to some of the policies which we are for. Now, speaking for myself, I'll just put this out there. There is nothing, well, I'm not going to say nothing that Joe Biden could do. There's very little that I think that Joe Biden could do, to change my perspective on things. His record is atrocious. And the fact that I feel that he literally has dementia. I can't, in any conscience, put a man in office which I feel is not there. I'm literally having to depend on his cabinet people on what they're going to do. And I have no clue well, I do have a clue as to which way it leans. The fact that the fact that most of his donors were nothing but billionaires and millionaires and CEOs and hedge funds and all these types of people like that, it tells me which way he's going to do things. When Obama ran on hope and change and all these aspirational things. But as far as he actually legislated, even when you go back to the 2008, the crash which happened, which started under President Bush, which he came in to clean up. I give him credit, and for many years I've given President Obama credit for being able to stem the tide of things. A lot of people don't remember at that time that there was something crazy, numbers like 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 jobs per month. And that, I know, granted, with all the stuff which is going on right now with the whole COVID-19, that kind of pales in comparison at the moment. But at that point, when you go from roughly, say 15,000 unemployment claims a month, all of a sudden to 400,000, 500,000, 600,000, and you're seeing across the economy all these things happen. Obama came in and he slowed that down, but the way he did it was he took care of big business first and foremost. And basically, they means tested everything else to try to see what is the bare minimum that we can give to the people who are distressed in this housing crisis and all these other crises that were going on at the time. Struggling without health care and all the different issues that were going on there. And Obama negotiated against himself over and over and over and over. Obama had no problem going out and campaigning hard, and he would say such things that give you all this hope that he was going to do a whole lot of things. It's the same kind of thing which I see with the politics of a Joe Biden and many of the other neoliberal candidates. It's a lot of what actually it's not even as aspirational, as Obama made things, because he kept a lot of things very vague, and most of us projected onto him what we believe hope and change really meant. Myself, because he spoke a lot about anti-intervention and trying to bring the troops home. I trusted Obama on that, and that was one of the things which drew me into that camp. When I saw and I followed, the whole Occupy Wall Street and the way he handled the problems. And plenty of people try to say, well, the Republicans this, Republicans, the Republicans are always going to fight you. They're always going to fight you. And the one thing I've noticed is the Democratic Party in my lifetime has done nothing but move further and further and further to the right, including with Obama, because Obama was more to the right than Bill Clinton was. Bill Clinton was more to the right than Carter was, and so on and so on. They just kept moving further and further right, at the point to the same Republicans, the same type of Republicans which I despised growing up, which I felt like were the worst politicians out there, are now not very much different than a lot of the people who control the Democratic Party now. A lot of the same elected officials. And so for Bernie supporters, you guys say the Supreme Court, you guys say all of these other issues, you guys talk about the kids in cages, which that was under Obama and Biden. For those who say, well, don't bring up Obama, you can't separate it because he was right there also. He could have easily went to a podium and spoken up about those issues if he had a problem with them. He did that when he separated from Obama on the LGBT issues, and Obama was dragged along to be more progressive in that instance. So you can't give him credit for that one time when Biden was able to go to the left and break from the president as vice president, and then ignore the other times with the drone strikes, with the mass deportations, with all of these things that went on. Now, from what I've heard of Biden's future administration so far, it seems to be almost the same kind of setup that Obama had. Obama had his cabinet given to him by, I believe it was either Citibank or Chase. One of those two banks literally just handed him a list. And if you look down the list, that's why you have most of his cabinet that was full of Wall Street workers, CEOs from the different healthcare industries, and all of these things were all in place in Obama administration, which will be the same continued into the Biden administration. And more than likely expect to see a lot of the same people who did not fight against Republicans when they needed to, but sold out to Republicans whenever they didn't have to. There were times when they could have used the bully pulpit to really push for more progressive things. I mean, you take the healthcare, you take Obamacare, which a lot of people love Obamacare. And the problem with Obamacare is it did nothing for price. It still kept it expensive because it kept the same CEOs who are profiting off of your health. It kept those same people able to do their same manipulations. And then they say Medicare for all is too expensive, when every single year your healthcare premiums go up. Every year. And if you actually do the actual cost analysis, our system would cost more than a Medicare for all system. Continuing on the pathway which is going, not adjusting for any elevations, which they haven't already spoken about, which they've already talked about a 40% increase for next year. So 40% increase next year. And that's just some of them. Who knows? Some might be worse. You never know. But to tell me, oh, just jump on the Biden bandwagon. All the things that I've said already about what the previous administration did, which he was a part of, which he was the number two, which co-signed all of those moves. When it came down to Social Security, healthcare, those things, he was willing to cut them like he's always willing to been willing to cut them. And then what's going to happen is there's going to be some kind of budget conciliation, process or whatever for some kind of major plan that he's going to want to put through. And the Republicans are going to propose cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and all those things like that. And Joe Biden is going to jump on it. And then, maybe then, some of you guys will start to understand why we feel like there's no winning in this situation, choosing between Biden and Trump. I look at it like this. The difference between Biden and Trump is Trump is outward with what he's doing, and he's probably a little bit more greedy. If you want to say, well, Biden, Biden hasn't done anything. Well, Biden's not a racist. Well, his crime bill, I still know people who are affected today by Joe Biden's crime bill. And so what, he's going to be the man who's going to come back in and fix that same crime bill? I mean, the crime bill, people talk about, Bloomberg stop and frisk. They talk about Cory Booker's stop and frisk in Newark. Pretty much almost every major metropolitan city uses some form of stop and frisk. And all of that was engineered by Joe Biden. Out here in California, when a lot of people are talked about the whole Kamala Harris thing and her leaving the man on death row, and you talk about the private prisons out here, how they have people packed up in here like almost like stationary slave ships, in my opinion. You have people, in bunks, packed in, sleeping on the floor, all kind of stuff like that in prison out here in California. And all of these things have been set up because of Joe Biden. But that's who I'm supposed to choose. And then you say, well, Trump is a rapist, or Trump has done this to women or done that to women. Well, Joe Biden's done the same damn thing. And if you say, well, I can't trust this one, I can't trust that one. None of us were in the room for majority of these situations. So you're picking and choosing from a liar or a liar. Remember, Joe Biden was kicked out of his first run because he was caught plagiarizing. On top of that, he literally sat there and talked about that he was in the civil rights movement and went around to black church after black church after black church after black church, talking about how he was a part of the civil rights movement. And then there's actual tape of him saying that, no, I didn't do any of that stuff. Media doesn't run any of this stuff. And then they want me to believe that everything was fair while they were attacking Bernie supporters. They said, oh, it's mostly a bunch of white young college kids, mostly around ages of 20, middle class, college kids. I found that offensive because I know a lot of women of multiple ages who are Bernie supporters and don't like being called a bro. Another thing is the emphasis on bro and that Bernie supporters are white. Obviously, look at me. I'm not white. That offends me also. The fact that, they'll say, well, Bernie supporters are more aggressive and attack people online. Literally, one of Elizabeth Warren's shooters was the shooter in Ohio. The shooter in Ohio, the mass shooter, was a Warren supporter. And yet, we're demonized. Show me how many Bernie supporters out there mass shooting people. But yet, Bernie supporters who yell at some people and send some tweets online, that's okay for the media to go after us. Even though there's millions of Bernie supporters online. So if you get one or two people who do something, that's enough for you to just attack them all. Well, let's say you switch that and we don't look at it as in Bernie supporters. Let's switch that to black people. Let's say one or two black people do something you don't like. Now you're going to demonize them all. Do you see how that works? Do you see what you're doing and how offensive that is? Well, that's what's been happening to Bernie supporters for not this year, not last year, literally since he got in the race the first time against Hillary Clinton. And we've been dealing with this vitriol and hatred from not only the established media, and I will say Fox News, which Fox News isn't even close to the worst offender. The worst offenders are the ones who are supposed to be our allies. MSNBC is literally the worst towards Bernie Sanders. CNN is right there next to him. They do a lot of bashing Trump, but they do a lot of bashing Bernie also. This broke my heart once I noticed this. NPR, which I always thought was kind of fair and kind of, even-handed. NPR does it. PBS does it. CBS, ABC. I mean, if you go back and literally look back at some of the debates, which that's something which I'm going to do. It's not so much going to be in my looking back so much at Bernie's, looking back at what went on with Bernie, but it's going to be a way that I think that we could fight these arguments, especially on a debate stage, much better and a lot more aggressively. We definitely can't take the Bernie approach. And that was one thing which always kind of bothered me a little bit. I believe, and I'm a very competitive person, and I don't believe in going into a competition and not giving everything before you succumb or lose. And Bernie left a lot on the field, in my opinion. I'm not saying that necessarily it would have been enough to turn the tide, but because he didn't even try, we don't know. It's like watching one of your favorite batters step up in the batting box and, he sees the pitch coming his way. He's been getting hits all day long. But right now, this is the bottom of the eighth, and you're behind by a couple of runs. You need this. You need to get the bat out there. You need to hit the ball. Do something. And Bernie watches the pitches and left the bat on his shoulder. In many ways, some people may disagree with me, and you know what? I know I said I was going to keep this short, and I apologize. It's getting a little bit longer but you know what? I feel like I need to get all of this off my chest and let you guys, hear this. And maybe you'll agree with my points. Maybe you'll disagree with my points. But when you have a man who is blatantly lying over and over and over and over, and you refuse to hit him, at some point, even though you're not lying, you're an enabler. You're allowing the lie. So in many ways, we have to, look at Bernie for his fault in how he gave, Biden this opportunity. And it doesn't feel good to say this, but we all have to be honest with ourselves. And I try to always be objective, especially being like, for instance, I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, for those of you that don't know. And we have went through so many bad, horrendous, embarrassing, stupid seasons. Went through so many. But I was always able to be honest with myself on how well I thought we were doing. How well, good or bad, the team was doing and what our real possibilities were winning. And I don't think in this case I was being overly just, biased in the Bernie camp. Yes, I was a supporter. Yes, I am a supporter of Bernie Sanders. But I always disagree with a lot of his approaches and his softer hand towards things. If you're gonna call out the establishment, you have to call out all the branches which make up the establishment, because you can't assume for the average people to know and understand who's on the good side, who's on the bad side, who should you watch, who's going back and forth. Most people have a lot of things going on in their lives, and it's a little naive to expect that they're all going to be able to keep up with all these things and research it or care to. Many people have already checked out of the system because they feel that there's not much difference between either, so it's just the lesser of two evils. Myself personally, I know too much about what's going on to buy into the lesser of two evils argument anymore, because I realized what this is a while ago. This is literally like when I was a kid and we would go and see the Harlem Globetrotters, one of my favorite things to go do. If they still even do it anymore. But we would go see the Harlem Globetrotters, and as a kid, I was so blown away because I thought it was real. I thought that these guys were able to do all these magical, cool things, and wow, they always made their shot, and wow, they were so impressive to me. And then as I got older, I realized it's not real. Yeah, these guys are very talented, and it's still a fun show, but it's not real. Politics is the same way. At least a lot of the stagecraft which you see on primetime and cable news. What I mean by that is, most of the time when they agree on things in Congress, it's almost always things which affect us negatively. We might get a little bit, but in the end, it's always a couple of steps backwards for us. They've just been good enough at convincing most of you out there that these small tokens that they get back after they've done the theft, that we should be thankful for it. And I just can't do that anymore. I refuse to continuously, go through this dog and pony show. One commentator I enjoy listening to often, he made the reference this is kind of like Bernie supporters. This is kind of like we're the battered spouse, and the whole DNC was the abusive spouse, and they just beat up on us, trashed us, treat us like crap, and now they're saying, "Hey, baby, we're sorry. Let's forget about it and let's have another chance." Well, there are good things that you're going to miss from that relationship. And just like Congress, there are things which you have to make a decision. Are you willing to leave that just up in the air, as a jump ball between the Democrats and the evil Republicans? I don't know. That's up to you. That's the same thing with leaving a relationship like that. You have to decide, is it worth sticking around for those couple of things which I do want to fight for? Or is it better for me to move on and look elsewhere or do something different? Well, I made my decision, and I'm not going to continue to be the battered spouse. With that said, I'll get out of here, and thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoy.